Well, they were the government's big idea for injecting some high-profile direct accountability in the police service. We have 5 directly elected police and crime commissioners, 1 for each of our forces. But fewer than 1 in 6 people turned out to vote in elections 2 years ago. Now Labour and the Liberal Democrats say they'd scrap them altogether. Our BBC WM political reporter Catherine Stancheshin considers what's at stake.
Meet Martin Searle. Martin's been the Police and Crime Commissioner for Gloucestershire since 2012. And this is the brand new building that will house state-of-the-art facilities for the Gloucestershire Force.
This will be our key investigators, the forensic teams, the cyber defence teams.
And it's a purchase that this PCC says wouldn't have happened if the role didn't exist.
We bought this very quickly. We knew it was coming on the market. We acted quickly, decisively, and that was one of the best days, really. We actually got this in just a few days, saved several £1 million by doing it that way. We didn't have to go through all the committee structure. I mean, so many projects in this county had been held up and just stagnated.
There are 5 PCCs in our region. All of them say they're doing good work, managing the purse strings and making sure police forces are working properly. But the Labour Party says it wants them abolished.
First, it compromises the rule of law. We must have operational independence of the police, accountable, of course, to elected politicians on behalf of the public. Second, because you cannot claim a democratic mandate if you have 1 in 10 people voting. And third, to be frank, there's been too many problems.
The idea that the post has no democratic mandate was reinforced for some at the by-election for the West Midlands Police and Crime Commissioner in August. Turnout was just 10% to elect Labour's David Jamieson. You might have thought he'd have similar views to his Labour predecessor, Bob Jones, who wanted the role scrapped, but you'd be wrong.
I think there's a great deal that a police and crime commissioner can do who is directly elected by the public to do a job, because they have to talk to the public and they can go directly to the Chief Constable and call him to account if that is appropriate. That can't be done by a committee.
So even within the Labour Party, it seems there isn't a consensus. Not so the Tories, who maintain an elected PCC is the best way of doing the job. The Conservatives say the role of PCC is working, but they're pretty much on their own. UKIP and the Lib Dems, as well as Labour, all say that they'd scrap the role. But if Labour do get into power next year, what would they replace them with? Meet Martin Kay. He's a taxi driver in Birmingham who's been a repeated victim of crime.
They just seem to pick up any weapons, bricks, pieces of wood and just aim at the cars.
Labour says people like Martin could help monitor the police in the future.
I do think it would be better to have a group of people on the panel watching what the police do, just rather than one person.
Labour says a new collaborative system involving elected council leaders, experts and victims would work. Critics say anything that looks like a return to the old police authorities would be a step backwards.
Catherine Stancheshin, and we're also joined here today by Staffordshire's Police Commissioner, Matthew Ellis. He's a Conservative. He'd earlier been a member of the County Council's ruling cabinet. We heard from Jack Dromey there, the Shadow Policing Minister. Let me just put together to you some of the reasons why he thinks that your role should be scrapped. First of all, politicisation of the police service, which he says compromises their responsibility in terms of the rule of law.
Well, I think chief constables have come out recently and said that that was a misnomer, that it hasn't happened, that police and crime commissioners have in no way compromised operational policing, and that's exactly as it should be.
Is there a sense, though, in which maybe independent commissioners, like Martin Searle we heard there in Gloucestershire, are maybe less politically compromising from Jack Dromey's point of view, let's say, than someone like you or David Jamieson in the West Midlands, who are party politicians?
I don't think so. I think that, you know, Martin, as an ex-police officer, some would argue that you reinforce the way it's been done before. I would rather have people know that my obsession is for spending public money better, is for not taking money off people if we're just going to pour it down the chute in waste. I've got some strong principles around transparency and openness, so the politics doesn't come into it. Remarkably, commissioners work very, very well together across party at the national stuff that we do at shaping the new Chief Police Officers Organisation, all the other stuff.
The other big point, of course, is about democratic legitimacy, given that this role was supposed to be the big, high-profile figure, and yet the turnouts have been absolutely pathetic. So it's failed that key public test, hasn't it? Nobody cares.
Well, it's new. who wanted another politician of any description, really? All I would say is that Labour's answer, the total number of votes in Staffordshire cast for the arrangements that you would replace police and crime commissioners with, is 18,000. I got 60,000 votes on my own, not 18,000 across 14 people. As far as engagement is concerned, the old police authority used to have around about 100 pieces of correspondence in from local people. We're up to 500 a month now. I've seen 14,000 people face to face. I can't go into a pub, I can't go into a supermarket without somebody coming up and saying, do you know what, I've got an issue with this. The thing that troubles me, I wish Jack would come and actually talk to a few people. I've written to him, I've written to others. It's being done from a point of absolutely no evidence and no knowledge of what the role's about.
And that's the charge levelled at your party. And add to that, you know, that you're thinking of putting in place this policing board, which many critics see as a sort of little Soreco of the old police authorities, which were, according to Theresa May, discredited, invisible, ineffective.
Well, firstly, I think we are not the only people that have said that police and crime commissioners are a failed experiment, and it is clear that they have failed. This
Isn't there an active debate still? Some in your party would like to reform, including David Jameson and some of the others that we are told have become commissioners from your party, and actually think that there is some worth in the
I would
job.
disagree. The next set of elections are going to cost 50 million quid. 50 million quid on an experiment in policing when we're losing officers on the front line, I just think is the wrong choice to make. These were supposed to be people that were going to have a sea change in policing, and it's just
what most people
failed.
think. They would rather see that money go into the frontline police.
Well, the problem with the Labour Party is they lose the argument when they start exaggerating. You saw that with Jack Dromer's comment that only 1 in 10 voted. It was a lot more than that. And also, it's not going to cost £50 million the next election because it happens to coincide with local elections in 2016 in May that are going to take place anyway. So there isn't the incremental cost unless it's extraordinarily expensive ballot paper you're planning on using.
I could see you itching to get in.
Do you know what? It depresses me that from a position of such ignorance, statements are made. The fact of the matter is that Staffordshire Police are in a good position now till 2020. The finances are broadly fixed, cancelled the cuts to frontline neighbourhood policing. There's nothing wrong in Staffordshire that I
Isn't
think
the reality though that whatever your success is, and it may well be that the mind is open that there may well be successes. I hear that in the area of community cohesion in the West Midlands, there's some good work being done because of having the commissioner there. But the perception is it's overshadowed by all these negative stories, the embarrassments, great and small.
Well, with the greatest respect, I'm afraid there's been an enormous amount of embarrassments with MPs overclaiming for expenses. The democratic process brings different people of different capacities. This is a new role. Some of your colleagues who are ex-ministers in the Tony Blair government are doing a cracking job on victim services. I think overall there's more good than bad. It certainly isn't a case of throwing them out now. Look at the research that will come out over the next 2 or 3 months, 4 months. Look at the evidence and then make a view, because the evidence that you will see is very different to what you're portraying at the moment.
Finally, quick thought that the PCC role has been seen in terms of something that could morph with this talk about English devolution into a wider city region role. So is that something that could be on the table, do you think?
I think it might be on the table. I think the whole discussion around localism is still up for grabs, and we might see some creative things come out in the manifestos.
Final quick word on that. You're throwing away an interesting possible new way of devolving power.
With strained finances for police forces, I think that it's about choices. So why go with a failed experiment that we're not the only ones that are saying it has failed, and actually just go back to frontline policing and having local accountability for our police forces?
I know we could go on and on with this, but we have to leave
in a way that works.
Policing.
And with that
result.
Thank you very much. In particular, thanks to you, Matthew, for
Pleasure.
being with us here today. So,